So good morning, everybody. Today we'll be speaking about motor neuron disease. So if you look at this slide, I think you can identify a famous personality. Anybody? Who is that famous personality? Anybody can identify? He was a famous British physicist, as popular as Albert Einstein, supposed to be one of the greatest geniuses. His name is Stephen Hawking. Unfortunately, he used to suffer from motor neuron disease, passed away in 2018. So his disability did not prevent him from becoming one of the greatest scientists in history. So motor neuron disease is not a single disorder. It is a group of progressive neurodegenerative disorders affecting the motor neurons in the cerebral cortex, in the cranial nerves, and the spinal cord. So all parts of the motor system, corticospinal, corticobulbar, LMN, UMN, everything is involved in motor neuron disease. Depending upon which type of neuron is involved, we give different terminologies. Now, can anybody tell me what an upper motor neuron is and what a lower motor neuron is? Indra Kumar, 152, roll number Indra Kumar. What is an upper motor neuron? Okay. Roll number 93, Niharika is an upper motor neuron. You know or don't know? I do not know. So upper motor neuron in the corticospinal system is from the fifth layer of the bed cells in the cerebral cortex, which project through the brainstem into the spinal cord and at the anterior horn cell. So from the fifth layer of the bed cells to the anterior horn cell is the upper motor neuron, and from the anterior horn cell and below is the lower motor neuron. This applies to the corticospinal tract. Now for cranial nerve nuclei, supranuclear path of the cranial nerve, upper motor neuron up to the nucleus, but not including the nucleus. Nucleus and the nerves arising from the nucleus, cranial nerves, they are all lower motor nerve. So this is the concept, basic concept in neurology. Unless you understand this, you will not understand neurology at all. Now, having said that, motor neuron disease is a neurodegenerative disorder. It affects particularly motor neurons only, and it's a group of disorders, not a single disease. Right. Now, the incidence of motor neuron disease is 2 per lakh per annum. Of course, this is Western statistics, but we have to follow what's given in the textbooks. 2 per lakh, and the prevalence, that is the rate at which the disease prevails in a particular area, is up to 5 to 7 per 1 lakh population. And the age ratio is, not the ratio, age is more than 50 is the mean age. It is rarely seen below age 30. It's extremely rare. Even in genetic cases, it's not easy for you to see a case of MND before 30 years. Sex ratio is male 1.5 is to female 1. In geographic distribution, there are certain areas in the world, especially the Western Pacific areas, where there is an increase in incidence, like Guam and Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is a country, separate country. Guam is an area. They occur in the Western Pacific, somewhere around Australia. There is an increased incidence. The reasons are not known. And there are certain risk factors. Risk factors are exposure to toxins and chemicals. Second is smoking. Third is military service. Why military service causes increased risk is most probably we can attribute to homosexuality. But how it spreads, HIV is the reason, it's not yet clear. Then chronic calcium deficiency. So most of the features in MNDs can be replicated in hypocalcemia, chronic hypocalcemia, especially hyperparathyroidism, where there is calcium deficiency. And coming to the etiology, it is 90% cases are sporadic. That is, there is no reason, or it means they occur here and there. There is no fixed time scale or a geographic scale. So one case you may get in AP, another case you can get in Punjab, and one in January, one in December, like that. So there's no specific time period or geographic period. We call them sporadic. So most of the cases are sporadic. So the problem is you cannot attribute a single reason to the disease. Then of the 10% of the cases are genetic. And among these 10% also, 40% are supposed to be due to the chromosome 9 open reading frame 72 gene mutation. We'll come to it later. 20% cases are supposed to be due to superoxide dismutase 1 gene mutation. So these are all genetic causes. There are so many number of case genetic defects are described, which means there is no single cause. Now coming to the classification of motor neuron disease, the sporadic and genetic we have just seen. Sporadic can be acute or it can be chronic. Chronic can be primary or secondary. Now I made a list from Harrison. This is not present in Davidson. You can copy it later. So this is the case of this is the table of sporadic motor neuron diseases. Acute can occur in poliomyelitis, Coxsackie virus, herpes zoster, and West Nile virus. Chronic, and the most common and most important of the chronic cases, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, that is ALS. And most of the concept is that ALS is synonymous with motor neuron disease. When you say MND, most of us think in terms of ALS, though they are not really synonymous. It is the most dramatic of all motor neuron disease. The reason being, one, it is relentlessly progressive. There is no drug which can stop it. There is only one end to the disease, and it involves all neurons, ultimately all upper motor as well as lower motor neuron disease, and neurons are involved in ALS. In other cases, it is either primary upper motor neuron disease, as primary lateral sclerosis or pseudobulbar palsy, or only lower motor neuron is involved, as in the case of bulbar palsy or multifocal motor neuropathy with conduction block, or motor neuropathy seen with cancer or paraproteinemia, or with peripheral neuropathies. Others are associated with other degenerative disorders. They are really not primary. So that is the time need. I mean, that is the reason we use the term sporadic rather than primary, because in sporadic are included secondary causes of motor neuron disease also. Secondary MND. So these are all differential diagnosis of MND. That is secondary MND. Next, coming to genetic motor neuron disease. Again, these are divided into upper and lower and upper and lower motor neuron plus ALS plus syndromes. So again, familial ALS, that is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It can be sporadic, it can be familial. And the commonest cause of familial ALS is SOD, that is superoxide dismutase gene deficiency and mutation. Then there are other classes, as you can see in this table. I think you can download this table at your leisure. And this I have condensed from Harrison. There is a long list, that's all not necessary for you, because MND can be an essay for you, and a few topics in MND can be short notes for you. Next one. Then we come to secondary MND, secondary cause of motor neuron disease. As you can see, there are structural lesions, infections, physical agents, metabolic causes, hereditary biochemical disorders, and others. So a long list. Again, this is only a condensed list. This list is actually longer. So these are the important features I have mentioned. You can try and remember some of this. Now, what does the pathogenesis occur? How does it occur? The exact mechanism actually is not known. In genetic, at least, you can ascribe that pathogenesis to deficiencies or mutations in the genes. The superoxide dismutase gene. It actually acts as a scavenger for superoxide free radicals, which cause oxidative stress. So unless this gene is normal, those superoxide radicals are not removed properly, they can cause cytotoxic death. Then increase in calcium channel antibodies. So calcium channel antibodies, if they increase, they stimulate the release of glutamic acid, glutamate. So it excites the nerves to an extent beyond their capacity, causing nerve failure, so to say, and death. Then disorder of RNA processing and metabolism due to mutations in genes, that is C9, that is chromosome 9. ORF means open reading frame 72. This is the latest candidate which is being extensively investigated. It is supposed to cause at least 40% of genetic disorders. It actually acts as a microsomal antibody. So it acts against the mutation is there. It acts against microsomes, which are the cytosolic scavengers. Actually, the microsomes remove all cell debris and unnecessary waste materials. They act as a waste paper bag in the cell. If they are attacked and destroyed, the waste material will destroy the cell itself. So TDP43 and FUS genes mutations also can cause. But in case of sporadic ALS, we really do not know the cause. But finally, whether it's genetic or sporadic, the death of neuronal cells is due to multiple cellular processes like excitatory toxicity, activation of endoplasmic reticulum stress, defective autophagy, impaired axonal transport. This is an important concept. And mitochondrial dysfunction. Not only microsomes, mitochondria can also get affected, especially with the TDP43 and FUS genes. And in addition to intracellular mechanisms of neuronal death, non-neuronal cells such as microglia and astrocytes, which are present only in the brain, and influence the course of disease also, especially in ALS. It is supposed to cause cell damage. Now, this is the comparison between a normal neuron and a diseased neuron. You can see that the Schwann cells have thinned and the normal nerve thickness has decreased, thinned out cells, nerve. As a result of which, you will see that the muscle also has become wasted. So these are all classic features. Wasting of muscles is a classic feature of MND. You can see that the neuron is also degenerated. It is about to disappear totally. And in the neuron continuation is also all patchy. It's not a thick line. It is thinning out in patches. And someday it will disappear totally. So neuronal death can occur. And then what is the pathology? What just you have seen is death of the upper motor neuron or lower motor neuron or both. The motor neurons shrink, and we have seen that figure also. And they accumulate a lipofuscin pigment. Then there are certain focal enlargement. So death of the neuron causes release of neurofilaments which accumulate in the form of spheroids. They are seen in proximal motor neurons. They suggest cellular death. And in the brainstem and spinal cord, it leads to denervation, consequent atrophy of muscle fibers. So whenever the motor neuron is dead, it will cause atrophy of muscle fibers because muscle fibers for function require both vascular supply and neuronal supply. So once there is loss of nerve supply, they degenerate, they die, and atrophy. Hence the name amyotrophy. Myo means muscle, trophy means nutrition. So A means lack of or loss of. So muscles lose their nutritional status, become thin. Then the loss of fibers in the lateral columns of the spinal cord result in a gliotic nature, fibrillary gliosis, and that gliosis is actually a form of the fibrosis, which causes firmness. So it becomes rather thick. That's known as lateral sclerosis. Lateral referring to the lateral columns in the spinal cord. Sclerosis is referring to the thickness. So amyotrophic lateral sclerosis means loss of muscle nutrition with thickening of the lateral columns of the spinal cord. This is the pathological definition of ALS. But even within the entire motor neuron system, we do not see all motor neurons being dead, and some are spared. What are spared us? Those of the those responsible for ocular motility, they are spared, and those in the frontal cortex responsible for cognition, they are also spared. And because by definition it is a motor neuron disease, sensory system is spared, autonomic system is also spared. 7 do again. So in motor neuron disease, you will not see 7 things. So what do you not see? You won't see any sensory disturbance, cerebellar disturbance, because corticocerebellar tracts are not involved. Bladder and bowel are supplied by the parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. They are not at all affected. Then extraocular motility is spared. This is supposed to be an evolutionary mechanism where functions required for survival are spared till the end. CSF is normal. One of the classic features of MND is CSF is absolutely normal. And no extrapyramidal involvement. Extrapyramidal refers to the basal ganglia. So they are not directly connected with muscle mass or movement. They only coordinate movement. So they are not really motor neuron, though they are upper motor. They belong to the upper motor neuron system. They are not really motor neuron. They are all higher functions. There is no cognitive impairment except in FTD, that is frontotemporal dementia, that can occur with ALS, but it's not regularly a part of MND. So cognitive impairment, except for the pseudobulbar palsy type, is not seen in MND. These things you have to remember. Now there are several clinical manifestations of motor neuron disease. So two short notes for you. One is pseudobulbar palsy, and second is bulbar palsy. Bulb refers to the medulla. So medulla contains nuclei of all the lower cranial nerves, that is from 8th to 12th. 3rd and 4th are present in the midbrain. 5th, 6th, and 7th are present in the pons, and the rest are present in the medulla. So bulbar palsy means if there are any affectation of the lower cranial nerves, we call it bulbar palsy. If in addition to that, there are cortical signs like emotional lability, that is the cortical sign which is responsible for calling it pseudobulbar palsy. It looks like bulbar palsy, but in addition there is emotional lability. This is a purely upper motor neuron lesion. Here, most of the cranial nerves are involved, except as we said, 3rd, 4th, and 6th are not involved because they are spared in MND. The 5th nerve is involved, 7th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So the last 3 are involved. So there is weakness of muscles of mastication and expression. Mastication is a function of the 5th cranial nerve. Expression is a function of the 7th cranial nerve. Both are involved. Jaw jerk is exaggerated, 5th cranial nerve. Palatal weakness, 10th cranial nerve, leading to nasal regurgitation. Swallowing of solids is difficult, is again 10th cranial nerve. Gag reflex is exaggerated, 10th. Tongue immobile and cannot be produced, 12th cranial nerve. Speech is drawling and monotonous, cortex. Emotional lability, again cortex. So speech, if it is pure bulbar palsy, you will have dysarthria. Drawling speech will not be there, neither monotonous speech. Monotonous means same tone is maintained. So usually when you speak some words clearly, some words very hard, some words softly. But in case of monotonous speech, whether he's talking to a friend or an enemy, the speech will be the same tone will be maintained. And drawling, that is, the speech will be dragged out. Each word will be dragged. So this is speech is drawling, and monotonous is a function of the cortex. Emotional lability means an excessive response to a particular stimulus, excessive as well as inappropriate. If you tell a joke, the fellow may laugh, but he'll keep on laughing beyond the normal limit. Similarly, if some bad news is given to him, he'll keep on crying more than what is necessary. Not that we can fix a limit, but it appears he is reacting too much. So that is known as emotional lability. And even without a stimulus, they suddenly burst out into laughter and crying. So that is emotional lability. Even the smallest stimulus can induce a very large over responsive presentation, that is known as emotional lability. So these are the features of pseudobulbar palsy. Remember the nerves which are involved. It includes nerves beyond the bulb. So 5th nerve is not a part of the bulb, though the cranial nuclei or the 5th nerve runs throughout the brainstem. 7th nerve is not part of the medulla. Now coming to the second presentation of ALS. So ALS can present in different ways. Finally, we will come to the final picture. It can present as bulbar palsy. It can present as bulbar palsy. So where there is a degeneration of cranial nerve nuclei within the medulla. And actually the difference here between pseudobulbar and bulbar palsy is bulbar palsy is degeneration of the supranuclear tract up to the nuclei only. Bulbar palsy is affectation of the nuclei. Nuclei belong to element, not human. So this you have to remember, because the signs you see, wherever the element is affected, there are classical signs. 5 signs are described wherever the element is affected. Similarly, 5 signs are described wherever the human is described. You will see atrophy in the cranial nerve supplied muscles. So all 8 muscles which are supplied by the lower cranial nerves will be atrophied, and they show fasciculations. And there is an absence of jaw jerk and gag reflex. So these are typical of LMN. Similarly, the thinning of the tongue, you see, wasting of the tongue. both cranial you see, and folding of the tongue. Tongue will become so thin it can be folded out. So these are features of bulbar palsy. So because of bulbar palsy, they will develop dysarthria and dysphagia. They cannot swallow properly. They cannot speak properly. So these are the features of bulbar palsy. Next, we come to the main topic, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, Lou-Gehrig's disease. So this is from a scientist. Now, the presentation of ALS, initial presentation may be different. It may differ from patient to patient. But what you have to remember that finally, in all patients, both upper motor and lower motor neurons are involved. So this is actually a diagnostic prerequisite to say it is ALS. Both UMN and LMN should be involved compulsorily at the end of this day. So initially, it may be pure LMN denervation. It may be developed in a one particular limb or two limbs. Usually, they present with weakness in one lower limb, and when they get up in the morning, when they try to move the limb, they'll develop severe cramps with volitional movement. That is, when they want to lift themselves from the bed or lift their hand, they develop severe cramping. This is very typical of LMN degeneration in ALS. So other signs of LMN palsy also you'll see. That is wasting fasciculations. Fasciculations patient can also notice if they are visible to him. Some people may start with bulbar denervation, that is bulbar palsy, leading to difficulty in chewing, swallowing, or movements of the face or tongue. So it will be difficult for them. Some people may start with purely corticospinal tract degeneration. So in all the muscles affected, voluntary muscles, you can see that there is a corticospinal tract of type of degeneration, that is UMN type, that is there is no wasting initially. Then you will see increase in spasticity. In fact, the spasticity will be so much, stiffness will be so much that patient will have very great pain and difficulty in moving the limb. And the spasticity is out of proportion to the weakness. And all DTRs are exaggerated. Deep tendon reflexes are exaggerated. And if you test for the plantar, it will be positive. Babinski will be positive. So these are signs of upper motor neuron lesion. No wasting, weakness, spasticity, exaggerated deep tendon reflexes, and a positive Babinski. There is no fibrillation right now. It is only corticospinal tract. It is upper motor neuron. Corticobulbar also is upper motor neuron, and you will see features of pseudobulbar palsy. So initially, these are all initial variations in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. But later, in the late stages, both upper motor and lower motor neuron disease signs will develop. Definitely in the limbs, you will get UMN and LMN signs. You may or may not have bulbar involvement or pseudobulbar involvement, but definitely corticospinal tract will degenerate. Both the upper motor neuron as well as lower motor neuron of the motor neuron system. Both UMN and LMN will be involved. So this is a sign qua non for diagnosing ALS. And in the limbs, there is one very classical diagnostic feature. You will see upper motor neuron signs in lower limbs and lower motor neuron signs in upper limbs. So if you see difference in these signs, see one limb showing wasting, another limb not showing wasting, one limb showing fasciculations, other limb not showing. One limb's DT are exaggerated, in another limb DTs are absent. So all these suggest ALS. They are diagnostic of ALS. In fact, it is the only condition where you see UMN signs in lower limbs and LMN signs in upper limbs. So this is a diagnostic point. But nevertheless, initial stages may be difficult to diagnose ALS because they may present with any of these features. So we have got two types of diagnostic criteria. See, previously it was called Escorial diagnostic criteria. Then this has been modified by the World Federation of Neurology. So World Federation of Neurology criteria are simplified. Initial demand is the two demands are to be met. That is simultaneous UMN and LMN involvement with progressive weakness. This is compulsory. Plus exclusion of all alternative diagnosis. That is one thing again has to be confirmed because MND is finally the diagnosis of exclusion. very difficult to diagnose ALS by clinical exam alone. In addition to this, if we have satisfied both these criteria, then we have got 4 areas under involvement. So motor neurons of any of these 4 areas, that is bulbar, cervical, thoracic, and lumbosacral. To divide them into 4 parts. If 3 or more are affected, then you call it definitive ALS. If only 2 are involved, you call it probable. If only one site is involved, you call it positive. But if there is only one site plus an evidence of superoxide dismutase 1 mutation, then that can be taken as definitive ALS, because SOD mutation occurs in only genetic ALS, familial ALS. So this definition does not differentiate between sporadic and genetic. It is applicable to all. So one site plus SOD1 mutation is definitive ALS. So for non-genetic cases, you can apply this criteria. They are simple to apply. So then what is the investigations? If you do an electromyography, you will see signs of widespread denervation and reinnervation. So the central nervous system tries to reinnervate, but it can never completely reinnervate. Any part of the CNS does not regenerate. But there is an attempt, like in fibrosis, cirrhosis, there is an attempt at regeneration. So that attempts you can see on electromyography. If you do an electroneurography, there is an decrease in the amplitude of membrane action potential, because the axons are lost. So if there is an axon, it will give rise to axonal potential. If there is no axon, you won't get any membrane axonal potential. So these are decreased. Other features are normal. CSF is normal. All blood tests in pure MND is normal. If you do genetic tests, if it is genetic ALD, you may find evidence of mutations in SOD1 or chromosome 9 open reading frame 72 or TDP43 or FUS. So many genes are described. Harrison has given a long list of genes which are affected, which are not necessary for you. So genetic studies are different. Normally, in case all investigations are usually normal, but you have to investigate for all secondary causes of ALS, because most of them are treatable. ALS is not treatable generally, but all secondary causes, if you investigate, most of them you can treat them. So structural lesions, metabolic lesions, and infections, you can treat most of the exposure to toxins. You can do something about them, but not with ALS. Then what is the prognosis for ALS? The prognosis is mean survival time is only 3 to 5 years. So whether you treat or not, it's only for 3 to 5 years once the diagnosis is made. But you can improve quality of life. There are several attempts to slow the disease progression, but only so far 2 drugs have been approved by the US FDA. One is the Riluzole. This is used in the dose of 100 mg per day. Overall studies indicate it will prolong survival only by 2 to 3 months. That's all, not more than that. The latest drug to be used now is IV edaravone. This is an antioxidant. Riluzole is an anti-glutamate agent. It will decrease glutamate release. So it will decrease the excitotoxicity of the motor neurons. Edaravone is an antioxidant. How it really works, we do not know. It's given as IV infusions. Doses have not been mentioned. And how far it is effective also has to be seen. There are several trials again to somehow alter the disease natural history by giving insulin-like growth factors, interferons. So many other drugs, antivirals are used. But as of now, we do not have a definitive diagnostic, definitive therapeutic drug which can halt or alter the progression of disease. So then what to do? If you cannot treat the disease, what to do? You can improve the quality of life. So you give assist devices like foot drops, splints, wrist extensor splints, reach extenders, grab bars. Then respiratory issue is a problem. The final cause of death in all MNDs is respiratory paralysis, because we have seen finally all the human and element nerves are involved. All nerves are involved. So you need muscular movement for respiration. So if both human and element are dead, the respiration one day stops. So the cause of death, commonly the cause of death in MND is respiratory paralysis. So they have difficulty in coughing also. So you give cough assist devices. You can give respirators. Non-invasive positive pressure ventilation can be done. This will also improve the quality of life. And speech, we have seen it is drawling and monotonous it can be, or there can be dysarthria, depending upon the stage of the disease. So voice synthesizers are present. So you attach them to the trachea, they will give some sound which can be deciphered. You want to say hello, you attempt. If you have MND, the sound may not come out. But if you use a voice synthesizer, it will give some resemblance to the sound hello. So speech therapy can be given. For muscle cramps, we give a central analgesic, baclofen or botulinum toxide, or you can do physiotherapy. If there is drooling of the saliva, you can give scopolamine and glycopyrrolate. Glycopyrrolate is similar to atropine. It will dry up the secretions. Feeding difficulties there. Initially, you can attempt rails tube feeding. Even if that is not possible, you can do a percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy. And for pseudobulbar palsy patients where there is emotional lability, it can cause social embarrassment. So in such patients, you can do antidepressants. So most of the treatment of ALS is only to improve the quality of life. Finally, the prognosis is only 3 to 5 days. So differential diagnosis, we have seen all the secondary causes of motor neuron disease come under differential diagnosis. Okay. So Stephen Hawking just so is an inspiration to several generations. He has given theories comparable with Albert Einstein. So a very definitely a genius in medical history. Unfortunately, he suffered from MND. He was lifelong on a wheelchair. That was in 2018.